Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is, my name's David Williams, as I said. This is an idea I've been sort of floating around for a while. So thank you for coming to listen to it. So just to give a brief overview of what we discuss, just give a brief overview of me and how I came up to this idea, a slight overview of the project I'm currently working on called Trude, then discuss what my theory of the elephant, how we're being trampled by this elephant, how society is feeding this elephant, and what we can do to tame it. So I've worked in the transport sector for the last 20 years. As a consultant, I've worked for local government and more recently sort of in academia. And whilst working in the consultancy side of things, I came across sustainable travel schemes that we were working on called Smarter Choices at the time. This is about 2008, 2009. And these had significantly better benefit to cost ratios compared to the highway schemes we were also working on. So I asked the question you should ever ask in a consultancy was, why are we building roads when there's little or no benefit to the user? Shortly after that was made redundant, although I'm not sure if that was related to my question. That was 2010. There was an economic downturn, change of government, and all the schemes sort of stopped. I had a couple of short-term roles working in local government, working in the transport sector. And then I saw a PhD advertised at one of the local universities in Bristol called UE, or University of West of England. And it was through a project called Disruption, which was designed to unlock low carbon travel. One of the key findings they developed through this was the concept of flexi-mobility, which was really sort of understanding that people's travel wasn't always fixed. They found through their study that people's travel and behaviour changed throughout the week, throughout the day, and it wasn't always the same vehicles travelling down the same roads. So there is actually some flexibility in how we travel. My research was standalone from this, and I looked at the helped me answer the question about how and why we build highways. So I was actually exploring sustainable transport in the UK and how that was funded. And the key findings I came up with were that the government ministers in the UK had a significant role in deciding what was classed as a sustainable transport scheme. And I found that for every pound that was being spent on sustainable transport in 2015, 2012, 2015, £9 was being spent on highway infrastructure. And since then, it's increased by a factor of about 1,000. So we're really locking in that need to drive. So I've worked on several different projects and for consultancies since finished my PhD. And in 2022, I was lucky enough to join the Trude project. And Trude stands for tackling the root causes of upstream and unhealthy urban development in decision making. There is a link at the end of the presentation if you want to find out more about the project. So overall, the project is trying to explore how we reduce non-communicable diseases from our urban areas and the way we've designed it. And when I joined in 2022, they're just coming to the end of their initial findings. And this is one of the slides that I saw, and it discussed many of the things that came up in terms of what I'd found in my PhD and through the Disruption project. The definite similarities in terms of what's happening to our health and to the environmental health. And one of the things that tends to not be discussed with government is how we reduce car use, even though the academic research is showing that this is quite a major problem. So I just want to put a disclaimer in at the moment. This presentation will not be showing the findings of the Trude project. These are based on my own ideas. And as I say, you can follow the link at the end just to see if there's anything else from the project, some of the amazing work that they're producing at the moment. So, okay. So it brings me to what the elephant is. This is the first thing. So the elephant in the road is based on the concept of the elephant in the room. It's the thing we don't talk about in politics. It's the thing that probably needs to change if we're going to make a significant improvement to people's health and our environment. So this goes back to the question of why do we build what we do? Currently, there's no one alive in the world, as far as I'm aware, that was here before the motor car. So it's now become a part of the fabric of our everyday lives. Everyone is used to the car, everyone is used to dealing with it. and we give a lot of our time, we give a lot of our money, and a hell of a lot of our space to these cars, and we live our lives through them, and we've built this upon what other generations did. So this quote's from one of my favorite films, of Shawshank Redemption, about a man who had been in prison through the rise of the motor car, and he hasn't seen them right. So just because we've followed this path, I mean, should we consider making a change at this point? Now we know that there are significant issues raised with the car. So as I say, cars have taken over, we've become very reliant on them, and the system's made us reliant on them. So if we were to go back to the start, would we do this again? If we have to reimagine and rethink about how we use the road, the purpose of the road is to move people and goods. Are motor vehicles, private cars, the way to do it? Is there a better way that we can increase the throughput of people and goods? And that this slide I found from the Cycle Professor on Twitter shows, if we reallocate the space for metro or buses, then it provides more space for green infrastructure, for walking, cycling, and other uses. So the elephant. This is the fact that in so many countries, the poorest element of the population don't have access to the car. So in the United Kingdom, in 2020, we conducted the census, and a fifth of the population don't have access to a car, even though the infrastructure makes it very difficult to get around or do anything if you don't have that. The image we've got here is from Germany. It's a very similar situation, possibly higher statistics from some of the cities that they were looking at. Okay, so now we're going to look at the sad fact that we are being trampled by the car, or the elephant in the road. It's a sad fact that the car is actually killing all of us. It's killing our planet, flora, fauna, and every human being is being trampled. So cars have become very dominant in the last 100 or so years, but there are lots of positives about the car. We name them, we care for them, we provide a significant proportion of our urban environment for them. But cars are incredibly costly. There's a really interesting book from 1958 called Insolent Chariots by John Keats, and he explains how the system's rigged so that we end up paying more money for a vehicle that depreciates in value as soon as we purchase it. And another issue we've had recently with vehicles is that engine efficiencies from the early 2000s have led to a huge increase in the size of vehicles and the rise of sports utility vehicles, or SUVs, which has created further risk to other road users. So again, this is a very powerful image that I found again through Twitter, and it demonstrates that the car is actually one of the biggest killers on the planet. And the UN estimate that over 1.3 million people a year are killed by the car. And the car is the #1 killer of children over 5 in the world. There are loads of things we can do to reduce speed limits in towns and cities, places where children walk and play, that can reduce the severity of injuries and the number of them as well. This has been shown in the United Kingdom, France, the Netherlands, which I think was mentioned in an earlier presentation, Spain, Norway, Finland, and countless other countries. The United States, however, having an increase in fatalities in the last 10 years, with up to 43,000 people dying in road crashes in 2021 alone. Helsinki, the capital of Finland, saw no pedestrian deaths in 2019, whereas the US has seen fatalities for pedestrians increase by 38% in the last 10 years. So there are definitely things that we need to do and changes we need to make. And going back to the fact that a lot of people at the poor end of society don't have access to cars, we also found a study where people in Orange County, Florida, who were in the lowest socioeconomic groups were more likely to die in a crash than other groups. Okay. Another area that's being sort of reviewed at the moment is quite how noisy cars are. Even electric cars can make a noise if driven quickly through their tyre impact on the road surface. Noises can be seen, sort of one vehicle going through a major city that's not got a muffler on it can wake up to 10,000 people at night. There's also emerging studies through Trude have looked at this in their initial study, that noise can increase people's blood pressure, and it can have other significant impacts on people's health. One of the other areas we're looking at is air pollution. So carbon emissions obviously are very bad for the planet. That was something that came up within the Disruption Project. And air pollution is bad for people at the local level. Both these things have a huge impact from the vehicles that we use. Evidence from London, where they've introduced the ultra low emission zones, but they've still found again that the poorest people are those again most adversely affected by poor air quality. The low emission zones have been shown to actually reduce the impact of harmful emissions, but tyre wear and brake wear can still create ultra fine particles that interact with human cells. So even low emission vehicles can have that retain having an impact on people's bodies. And we're now increasing evidence that motor vehicle emissions are being linked with cases of dementia. Another issue is that driving has an impact on our physical activity, with a rise in obesity epidemic taking over in many countries across the world. And this links back again to TRUDE, where this increases our chances of dying of non-communicable diseases, including coronary heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cancer of many different types, dementia, which we mentioned before, and depression. It's estimated that obesity costs my country, the United Kingdom, £27 billion a year in health costs alone. And the simple finding is like walking for just 11 minutes a day could stop 10% of early deaths if we provide the infrastructure that makes that better for everyone. Another area where cars are causing issues is our own mental health. So this image is quite sort of startling, really. I mean, it's probably through the person that shared it, the context of the extremes, but it shows one on the left where the child was driven to school and all they see is the roads and the dark shapes, whereas the other person's walked or cycled to school and they can see the buildings and the colour and everything. So our mental health is improved dramatically if we get out of our cars, and that's providing we provide safe walking and cycling options. Walking and cycling have been found to be the happiest ways to get around when the system is designed for, even when the system hasn't been designed for that. And I think it's evidence from Chuck Hillman at Illinois University found that 20 minutes of exercise improves children's performance in education. And as we said here, it improves their experience of the environment. In addition, cars cost us a great deal of money, and that adds a level of stress to many people who are struggling with other things like rent and high cost of food at this point in time. So what's feeding the elephant? What's keeping this system? What's keeping the status quo? We know cars are bad for us, but and if they're introduced today, they would probably be banned or made much more difficult to use or own. So why are we keeping using them? So I think the first thing that keeps everything locked in place is planning. It's understood by most people that highways are for cars, and everything should be done to ensure that that journey is not impeded. And that obviously has an impact on walking, cycling, public transport, which is all pushed to the margins. Countries tend to pour billions of dollars or pounds or any other currency into trying to reduce congestion and speed up the journeys of the drivers. And again, that's at the cost of other users. And if you let your network allows cars to drive fast, then they will. But if you set it up for people to walk and cycle and feel safe, they will. In the US, this has led to the tarmacking of many places and the creation of lots of land that's used for parking spaces that could be then used and utilised for other better purposes. In the United Kingdom, and I think it was mentioned in one of the earlier presentations, the delivery of low traffic neighbourhoods make it more difficult for car journeys, as in the picture we're showing. But they have they still have critics, but those critics tend not to live in the low traffic areas, tend to be the people that's journey has been compromised by the fact that they can't do the shortcut through the route that they took before. But the benefits are there for the people that live in the area. So the next thing is the infrastructure. So once we've got the planning, we then go and build our infrastructure. We found probably from the 1980s onwards, possibly even before, that you can't build your way out of congestion. It's just not possible. Traffic acts like a gas and fills any space that you provide. It's induced demand. You build a road and you'll build some new infrastructure, a new housing estate or something, and that will then fill that space. Conversely, if you remove road space, traffic disappears from your network. And this isn't just a one-off thing. This has been shown across the whole world in 200 plus case studies and cities like Paris, and they've actually found that traffic movement improves. So countries that have already started delivering their infrastructure, such as the Netherlands, started in the 1970s when the initial fuel crisis happened 50 years ago, they realized they didn't have enough money to continue building for road traffic. So they started building for cycling and walking. The country now has an amazing cycling infrastructure in all its towns and cities. Paris is now currently going through a very similar change to this, and the benefits are starting to be seen with the reduction of lower air quality issues happening. So reallocation of space can provide significant societal benefits. Another interesting area I came across was how we maintain our network, particularly in colder climates, for winter maintenance. In Finland and Sweden, they focus on the most vulnerable users, and Sweden focuses on female journeys. And then through this, they decided to clear ice and snow from footpaths and cycle paths first before going to the highway, because these were predominantly the journeys made by women. Well-maintained walking and cycling infrastructure is beneficial to all users, as it stops cyclists from riding back on the highways, but is often, unfortunately, the last priority from my experience working in maintenance teams of the transport infrastructure. That doesn't obviously come from our team, it comes from the politicians in the organisation. Another thing that keeps us feeding the elephant is taxation. Governments make a significant amount of money from taxing vehicles, through taxing fuel, and all the other elements that go into driving. So therefore, there's little incentive really to change that system without having a significant impact on the fiscal budgets for the country. In 2017, there was a very interesting award called the Wolfson Economic Prize, and Gergely Rachuka won this prize, and he had the concept of charging tax on vehicles by their weight and the impact that they have on your highway infrastructure and all the other assets. The judges obviously awarded this, spent the next year going to the politicians in the United Kingdom, trying to get this idea to move forward, but received absolutely no support from any of the political parties for changing the status quo. So, as we've said, the use of the space is an issue. Cars don't have the throughput. Public transport, as this picture shows, can carry a lot more people and a lot quicker if the infrastructure is there for them. The same for trains, metros, light rail, all other sort of ways of improving it. There can be an excellent use of space, and they don't require parking, so that land can then be reused for other purposes. Yet many countries see public transport as a business rather than a service, and this has led in the United Kingdom, because services aren't profitable, to 10% of all services in the United Kingdom being cut in the last year. This reduces the level of service, making them unviable for people to use them because they can't guarantee they can get to or from work. It can lead to social exclusion, again, having an impact on the poorest people in the population, can lead to depression, illness, and all those other issues. And if you're stuck in traffic like this, it increases your risk of anxiety. So how do we tame this elephant? What can we do? I don't have all the answers, unfortunately. I'd be a millionaire if I did. So one of the things we need to do is focus on government policy. I mean, this really is not an easy solution. And we may not have the same funding that big business and the car industry and oil industry have to tackle it, but we do have the numbers of people. So I think we need people like yourselves to step forward, go into government, take those roles and bring this through to the public. We also need to address this with the existing politicians and lobby to make sure that they understand the narrative of the benefits this is going to provide to society. We also need to make them understand, which is probably the biggest challenge, that the benefits that they deliver through this won't necessarily be seen in their political life cycles, but the benefits will be long lasting, and that's how we need to show it. Having researched this, there's just a tsunami of evidence that demonstrates from all over the world that these changes will provide a significant impact and challenge and bring about all the health and environmental benefits that we're looking for if we would just reduce our car use. Another area we need to focus on is businesses. We need to make sure businesses support and understand what we're doing. This is a very interesting picture from Montreal, and you can see the difference between those two spaces and just how much better it appears for people. I've recently come back from Prague. My hotel was next to a very main busy road, and it was very uncomfortable. I didn't sleep very well. So I walked into the city centre at night, and there was no cars around, and it was peaceful, even though there was thousands of people around. If you make these spaces enjoyable and nicer, then they're more likely to come out. I think Madrid pedestrianised their local retail area, saw a 9.5% increase in retail spending and a 71% drop in air pollution. Cyclists and diners, if you remove parking spaces, bring considerably more money than one parked car that could be there for a day or several over the course of a day. If businesses can start seeing these benefits through the reduction of cars, then politicians will also have to listen to them. Another element we could do is produce car-free days. This is a sort of softly approach to build up. Could do weeks, holidays, different times of the year. I've often heard that not everywhere is Amsterdam, and as this picture from 1978 shows, Amsterdam wasn't Amsterdam back then. Car-free days can sort of support, if you develop the walking and cycling infrastructure and the public transport before you do it, you can enhance the provision and show people, you know, what the differences can be. This can be done, like I say, the small steps, or you can be like Paris, where you've got the mayor who's driven it forward and make giant strides and make a huge significant difference. So going back to my final film quote, if you build it, they come. This is simply, if you build the infrastructure that you want, then people will walk, they will cycle, and they'll use public transport, providing it's at an affordable level. So conclusions, really. Cars are a major issue to our health and the health of the planet, and many politicians are not prepared to listen to us about this. It's easy to fund what we know about as politicians and what we understand, even if it is taking us down the wrong path. Change can be made by politicians, as Paris has proved, and we can demonstrate how that change is possible. We now have more than enough evidence to act, and we need to make sure that we tackle this elephant. Thank you very much.